some months, like I would be depressed. I was like, what is going on? Like we were doing so well the past 2 months. Why is it not good? You know, like, and we did a huge like data dump. Like we just went in and we started seeing where we were doing well, where we weren't doing well, where were people dropping off, why were people dropping off, and we tried to start fixing show by show, show by show, show by show, you know?
Welcome to Conversations with Loulou. My guest is Bassel Anabtawi, the co-founder of Rising Giants Network, a UAE-born company that launched in July of 2020 and has since produced 30 English and Arabic podcasts. Bassel is an early podcaster. You may know him from his show Bassel Meets. He's also one of the key figures in the podcasting scene in the region. In this conversation, we're going to talk about getting started with Bassel Meets and what are some of the key learnings he has taken away. We're also going to talk about the challenges of this business and how are brands working with podcast networks to co-create content and build communities. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, great to see you. Last time I saw you, well, I was on your show on Bassel Meets.
Yeah.
And then the second time I think we met, you were starting Rising Giants Network.
That's true. Yes.
So it's been a couple of years, I guess.
Yes, but we've stayed in touch.
We have stayed in touch.
Yeah.
You are definitely someone I can pick up the phone and speak to, right?
Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah.
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 Bassel, tell us a little bit about Bassel Meets. Like, what got you to start it?
Yeah. So Bassel Meets it started off as a passion project. I've always wanted to start my own thing, and I've failed miserably so many times, and it's my fault, to be honest. I've always wanted to do something and I wouldn't commit to it, and I'd do something and didn't commit to it.
That's human, by the way.
That's human. Yeah. I am still very human, about many of these things, but definitely, I've always wanted to just get out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to do something. And, I tried my hand at e-commerce, I tried my hand at content, I tried my hand at so many different things. And every time I would start, I get bored, and
But you had a full-time job. Let's make it clear.
Yeah. Of course, I had a full-time job.
Is in addition to what you were doing on a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would come back home. I still remember this. I come back home. My wife Dana, bless her, she was always like a overachiever. She was an instructor at Flywheel. She had a full-time job. She was doing her master's, and that always inspired me to get off my ass and do something, So every night I would come back home, my wife would sleep early because she had a class at 7 a.m. And I would sit there and open my laptop, open my presentation. I'm like, okay, let's see. E-commerce, and I start putting stuff together. I'd get bored after 10 minutes. I'd open Bukra, I'd open Netflix and I'd do my thing, But then in 2017, I started when I was running, I started getting bored listening to music. So I thought I want to check out this podcast app that I have, and I'd look into it and I'd start discovering Joe Rogan and how I built this and all these different shows. And I started listening to that, and as I run, my runs have become so much more entertaining, and I started looking forward to running. Before I was dreading it, أطلع هلا بالشوب وأركض, because I used to hate it. So anyway, I started getting to that, and as I got into this, I started getting more passionate about the format of podcasts, and so I decided, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing podcasts. Mm-hmm. This is my new idea right now. I went to Dana, explained to her what a podcast is. She's like, sure, okay, you should definitely do that then. Mm-hmm. In parallel, I wanted to start my master's. I applied. I had to do a whole thing. I got accepted. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That seems like it's a lot of work. So I'm not going to do that. So I decided to go buy a microphone, and I went to Muraggabat. It's a very dodgy area. Not dodgy, actually. It's just a very old school area in Dubai. I love it. I love these old school areas. Went there, Melody House, shout out to Melody House. And I looked at the microphone, and I had a big dialogue with myself. Should I or shouldn't I do this? Because I knew that every time I started something, I just backed out. Mm-hmm. And this time I have to put money behind it. And it's only 700 dirhams, but still there was now money behind this idea. And but sure enough, I did it. I bought the microphone, and I organized with my buddy Joe Akkawi shout out to Joe Akkawi to be part of my first episode. Mm-hmm. But then I remember that the night before, I was out having dinner, me, Dana, and a couple of friends, and I was hoping to God that Joe would cancel, you know?
Sick or something, yeah.
Yeah, I was exactly, just calling sick. And he messaged me at night.
Yeah.
He's like, I was like, oh yes, Joe's canceling. And I open it, and he's like, hey, we're on tomorrow. What time? It's like, damn it, now I can't back out, you know? And so we did the first episode, and the rest was history, you know? And
First
started
episode is daunting, by the way.
Yeah.
I remember I recorded my first episode at your studios, actually, where you recorded.
No way. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
BKP.
Yes, of course. I recorded one episode there. It was my first one.
With Bashar?
Bashar was there, yes, your co-founder.
Ah, yeah.
And my guest was Nadim Samara at the time.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Of course, yes.
I remember it was so daunting. You know, that first time, like I prepared so much, and you're thinking about everything that could go wrong.
I didn't prepare anything, to be honest. Like, because I thought if I over-prepared, then I'm gonna overexert my mind, and then my mind's gonna want to remember things, and you know. So I was like, let's just go have a conversation with Joe. You know, what's the worst that could happen? You don't release it. Khalas, you don't release it. But I had such a good time doing it. You know, in the beginning I was so nervous. You know, but then me and Joe have a lot of like very common interests. So it was easy to do it. You know.
Yeah.
And I found it easier to have conversations with people I don't know. You know, because there's no expectations of how I should be, you know? So you don't know me, I don't know you, and we should like, we just have a conversation, you know? In fact, the first time I had you on, we didn't know each other, right?
Yes,
like we just spoke, and it was so easy for me to have a conversation with people that I don't know, you know? Because when you know someone for so long, khalas, they already know who Basil is, you know? So on the podcast, I have to be a certain person, you know? And I try to be as much myself as possible. When you're somebody for 10 years, it's kind of weird, you know? Like it felt weird, you know? Now I have to be Basil of the podcast. It's strange, you know?
Well, for me, it's funny you say that, because for me, it was for me a lot easier to start with people I know.
Oh, interesting.
Because I didn't have to research them as much, or I didn't really because when you know somebody, I feel like you also know their character, their quirks. You know, I think there's more chemistry, etc. So for me, it was the other way around. Actually, I started maybe the first 10, 15, even maybe 20 guests were people I know, and I know well, and then I started like bringing in other guests.
I think you know what it is. I think it's a personality thing. I'm a very curious person, you know. So when you tell me something, that kind of opens 10 doors in my head to kind of follow into this. So which rabbit hole do I want to take with Loulou? You know, this one seems interesting. And I remember you and I had a lot of conversations about, you know, being a mom, not me being a mom, being parents, I mean, and how you managed that and that kind of thing. Because I found that so fascinating. Like your journey was very interesting for me. Yeah. And the fact that you were also like a mom, and you had just delivered, I think back then, remember? Yes. You were just delivered. And, and I had related that so much to my experience with my wife, who was just about to deliver. And she's also, like I said, she's an overachiever. And, you know, so I guess in nature, I'm so curious that when I talk to people, I like to know more about them, and I'm genuinely interested in what they have to say and how I can relate that to my story, my journey, my surroundings, and that kind of thing. And that's why I think I found it to be easier to have just strangers on the podcast, you know? Yeah. It's weird, I know, but what you said makes a lot of sense too. Like,
yeah, but you went and reached out to people even outside of the region, right? Like you had international guests on your website, you had artists.
Sure, yeah.
Like how did you get some of these artists? Like, can you?
Yeah, I mean, look, Basil Mace was a very interesting, exercise in dropping your ego, you know, and just asking people to get on your podcast. And if they say no, they say no, you know? Yeah. And then suddenly I started I started getting into this thing. I had an Excel sheet with names of people on it, like people I would love to have on the podcast, you know? Khalid Al-Amri was the first one. Khalid Al-Amri, big influencer.
He's very big here.
So easy for me to get him. Like it was just, I thought it was going to be layers of people.
Maybe I should try him then.
He's awesome. I should definitely hook you up with him. He's incredible. Him and Salama, great people. I just messaged him through Joe Akawi, my first guest. So good thing he didn't cancel, you know. He put us in the group, and I told him, hey, would you like to come on my podcast? He's like, yeah. And, you know, he came on and had a really crappy, dingy studio that I was recording out of. It was so dodgy, like, you know, it was just really weird. Even the owners were never there. Like, just keep the door open for me. I would just go in, and it was so dodgy and dark. But hey, I made it my home. So yeah, I had Khalid on, and then I would reach out to more and more people. Like I had Jeff Staple, who was a sneaker designer, because I was into sneakers back then. Not so much right now.
Okay.
It was a very expensive hobby. But like, it was so cool to have him on. And then, and I reached out to him through his website, and they just said, okay. And the biggest one obviously being Slash from Guns N' Roses. I'm a huge rock fan, and I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan. After Metallica, like Guns N' Roses is my second favorite. And I remember somebody telling me like, why the Slash get on your podcast? You're so small. Like, why would Slash from Guns N' Roses get on your podcast? And I was like, well, all I got to do is try, And I tried through Anghami. Shout out to Anghami. I pitched it to them, and I told them that, he should come on my podcast. So if he comes, he shouldn't be talking to anyone except for me, Don't give him to like some newspaper or whatever, like, who don't know what to ask him, I know what to ask him,
Yeah.
It's funny though, because like I got a call from his manager when it went through, and I got a call from his manager, and they briefed me on what I can and cannot ask Slash, and they told me you cannot ask him about Guns N' Roses. It's like, how can I have a conversation with a Guns N' Roses guitarist and not ask him about Guns N' Roses? Like, that's because he just released a solo album, so you need to ask him about his solo album.
Oh, okay.
But the way I did it was I asked him questions, but honestly speaking, I got amazing answers from him because I got so much press after it. Like, he said something, there was a solo song that I like of Slash, and I asked him about it. And he said that song was supposed to be a pitch to The Walking Dead. It was supposed to be a song that he wanted to be on The Walking Dead because he loved that show, but they rejected it. So he took it and he made it his own song, and it became like one of his big songs. And that was an unknown fact. Like, no one knew about this, right? And the moment it came on the podcast, it went on The Independent, on like all these publications around the world. Had Slash appeared on the Basil Meets podcast. Okay. Me and Basil Meets, and they linked back to my podcast, Yeah, it was amazing. Like,
what's the learning from that? Like, I mean,
I don't know if there's for me, it's okay. So I think from Slash in particular, I think it's just, just go in there, if you get challenged by what not to ask, try to ask him by what he wants to talk about, and then steer him into the territory where you want him to go. But sometimes, honestly, like, he will go to areas where you just didn't expect, and it opens more like sort of doors for you to ask other questions. Like, from the back of that, he started talking about Guns N' Roses himself. He talked about how him and Miles Kennedy, his vocalist on his solo albums, how they work together, and how much he loves working with Miles, and then how his experience as a solo artist is different from his experience on Guns N' Roses, and how that happened. So Khaled started talking about Guns N' Roses on his own, and it was really cool, but also for me it was amazing. Like, it was the small, the young 19-year-old or 18-year-old who used to listen to Guns N' Roses all the time on the way to university, fulfilling his dream, sitting in front of Slash. And I had that. I'm lucky, alhamdulillah. Like, I had that with Metallica, like, as well, because I was a Metallica fan since I was 13, and the fact I got to meet Metallica because of my Basil Meets Metallica campaign, and
what Basil Meets Metallica campaign?
I mean, when they came in 2011 to Abu Dhabi, there was no way anyone was going to meet Metallica if it wasn't me. Like, it's just I had to be. Like, there's no way. I'm the biggest Metallica fan in the world, So I started this hashtag Basil Meets Metallica on Twitter in 2011, and it just exploded. I was on TV. I was on, like, it's crazy. It became a top trending topic in the UAE. Okay. TV, magazines, websites, radio. Everybody calling me like, "Why should you meet Metallica?" And like, I would pitch it to them and stuff like that. And eventually, Do got me the pass. And I got to meet Metallica, and
they were on your podcast.
And well, there was no podcast back then.
Okay.
It was
that was 2011.
Yeah, there was. But I got the video and I put it on my YouTube channel,
right.
And it was always called Basil Meets Metallica, the YouTube channel. And then I made it Basil Meets, and then started. And when I thought of a name for the podcast, I was like, I was just gonna call it Basil Meets Metallica / Loulou, everyone. I'm just gonna Basil Meets people, So yeah.
So I guess your thing is ask, like don't be scared to ask, right?
Yeah, don't be scared to ask.
Be creative. I guess you're creative. I mean, you find ways to get to these people.
Yeah.
Hashtag campaign, Rami, like you're always.
You gotta hustle,
Yeah,
like
you're always finding a way.
I think I've always been. I've always liked challenging myself to do something that a lot of people couldn't do. So, yeah, for example, when I first saw Metallica, ever, I saw them in Germany in 2008, and there was 90,000 people, coming to watch Metallica at that concert. So the odds of you being at the front barricade is 1 in 90,000. Well, not 1 in 90,000. I guess it fits 1,000 people, so whatever the math is. But you know what? I woke up at 7 in the morning, me and my buddy Zaid, and we went to the festival grounds, and we waited until they opened the gates, and we ran. It was us and another 200 to 300 people waiting, and
fanatics.
Fanatics, and we ran, and no food, no water, nothing. Yeah. I ran until I got the barricade, and this was at 10 in the morning, and I waited and Metallica was going to come on at 10 in the evening. Wow. So I waited 12 hours. But you know what? Every single person who told me you were not going to be at the front barricade, I proved them wrong. That was the front barricade. I saw Metallica for the first time right in front of me, and it was the best thing in the world. I do not regret it.
Amazing.
I had a huge meal afterwards because I was so hungry, But yeah, that attitude is so important, like challenge yourself. And what is your capacity for you to do it? Like, I think it's very important to understand what your capacity is and challenge that capacity, And my capacity during Basel Meets is how many people can I get in this podcast? And can I get Slash? Can I get Khalid Al-Amri? Can I get these people that are so unattainable, And I think I proved to myself that I could do it. So on to the next thing. And what else can I test my capacity on? And I think that's the biggest, that's the biggest learning for me, not just Basel Meets, but just in general for everything that I do. Work under pressure. What's your capacity to deliver,
So at what point did you decide I'm going to start a podcast network? So, you went from a hobby.
Why did I do it?
To you raised $1 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that was the announcement.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just, I always question my life decisions.
Yeah.
So you can relate, right? You had a startup yourself, so you know how it's like not rosy at all.
You sometimes I think you just do it sometimes and you just think about it later, especially if it stems from a passion of yours.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs could be calculating, thinking, okay, like this is a great industry that has a growth rate of X per year. And
right.
The total addressable market is like, 2 billion. Therefore, I'm going to pick this niche and build a business. So there's those types of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And there is like me, like you, people who are...
I'm definitely not that type.
Yeah, me neither. If I had to do it again, I would be that type.
Yeah, I think because you learn with the process, I need to know this, so make this succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when I started, it wasn't like that. So,
yeah, for sure.
So you decided, okay, I want to build a business out of this. You're doing great. 30 shows.
Yeah, we got 30 shows. Look,
you have hit shows as well?
We have, yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's a struggle. It's a daily grind. It is a daily grind. But how we started was like I met Barry Kirsch. Barry Kirsch owns BKP. They're a post-production audio studio in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia. And amazing guy, super down to earth. And sometimes when you want to get into a business, you want to have the right person to do it with,
Absolutely.
And he is, yeah, you have to. And I really gravitate to personalities that I feel complement mine, Look, I was never, like you said a very important thing, like people who think about addressable markets and X by year, blah, blah. I'm not that person. And I tried to be. And I think that's why every single time I tried to start something, it didn't pan out because I just realized I'm not that kind of person. I can't go to an investor and be like, X growth per year, but I don't know how to do it. That's not my language, And I've never been, I was a content guy. That's my job. Like my job was always in content and, so I'm creative by nature. I always also have a corporate side because I've always worked in corporations and stuff like that, So Barry is very much like me. Like we clicked because we have that same thing, so he told me I want to start a podcast network, or I want to start a podcast company. What do you think? because you have Bassel Meets. Like, I want to start a podcast network too. Like, I always thought that I want to get, these shows that I love, like the Wondery shows or the NPR shows or whatever. I always wanted to do Arabic equivalents, and he said, okay, you can use my studios and let's do something together where you can utilize BKP studios and stuff like that, and we can be partners in this thing. And so we started, me, him, and my partner Bashar. Shout out Bashar Najjar. Yeah. Also Bashar, I got to meet him for the first time through Barry. And Bashar is amazing as well, like in terms of his personality, super chilled. I'm a super extrovert, and Bashar is very much of an introvert.
But Bashar is the technical expert.
He's a tech guy, yeah.
He's the engineer.
But he's my right-hand guy though. Like he's I couldn't ask for a better partner, متعاون, cooperative, and listens to me and I listen to him, and we it's a very good relationship that we have. And so when we felt like that could work, we then got another guy with us who can do the things that you talked about, X growth, وما بعرف شو,
The TAM song.
Yeah, TAM, what is that?
Target addressable market.
See, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
We just got this out of the podcast. No more investors in the future.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, he comes from that world, and he kind of believed in what we were doing. So it's okay, listen, guys, I'm gonna structure you, and I'm gonna put some money behind you, and then I'm gonna help you get investors. And sure enough, he helped us with that. And me and Bashar, we started creating shows. And in July 2020, we launched in the midst of the lockdowns. Yeah, there was COVID-19 lockdowns. Kaza, what are we going to do? Because we spoke about this before the lockdowns. But now we have no access to studios. We have nothing. Everyone is at home. I keep throwing Arabic in there. And then it worked in our favor because Bashar was in Saudi for work with BKP. And then all the airports shut down, so he couldn't leave Saudi. But so he met a lot of great Saudi talent that started working with us. People who are media personalities were sitting at home. They weren't going to the studio. So we sent them microphones and they started working with us because they were bored at home and stuff like that, like influencers and stuff like that. And we launched with 7 shows. By the end of the year, we had a sizable amount of downloads, and based on that, we went and we sold the dream, of a podcast company. And there wasn't many examples in the region.
So you did the 7 shows before you raised the money?
Yeah, before we raised. Yeah. So we had nothing before that. So 7 shows, and then we had BKP access. Because after the lockdowns, the studios started opening up again. So we started getting people back into the studios and stuff like that. And then in Jan 2021, we raised what we raised, and we just went, racing. It became super see on creating shows and, recruiting as many people as possible under the network, and then see how it grew. Trying to understand what the verticals were that were working for us, and then how we doubled down on what worked and what didn't work, how we cut it out, and we made a lot of mistakes, obviously, So, but yeah, you do what you got to do.
Can you mention some mistakes?
Sure, yeah. Where do I start? No, look, I think we in the beginning, I think there was a lot of sometimes we would put a lot of effort into one thing, and that thing wouldn't pan out, and that was a mistake, for example, a client would come in, and we were so focused on getting revenue, because you have to have revenue to have a successful business. And so, okay, we have these shows and they're moving and stuff like that. So we got to get revenue. And so anybody who would give us a hint that they were going to pay us money, we would put all of our effort into that. So what suffered was our shows, because we would be, all of the company, all 3 or 4 of us would be focused on, that deck and doing demos and all these type of things. And then in the meantime, the rate of downloads is suffering because we're not focusing on the shows, And so that was, I think, a major thing for me that I learned.
So concerned about revenue early on?
Too concerned about revenue. I don't think you shouldn't, because you have to get revenue, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah, you have to get money.
But I mean, you are in a very difficult industry, podcasting.
Extremely difficult. You know how difficult it is? You have to...
I know how difficult it is.
You know how difficult it is, right? It's so hard. No one gets it. Like, it's just, I have to do an educational, like, monologue every single time I talk to anyone about podcasts, you know? And it's so, like, it's soul sucking, you know what I mean? Like, it's everyone. Well, except for actually Saudi clients are way more like, they get it more because I think it's just much more in the ether. You know, it's in the zeitgeist of Saudi. Like, they get it, you know, they get what a podcast is. They have a few really big mainstream shows over there. So, you know, but it just gets tiring. But, you know, with time, we start seeing people more responsive and starting to get it. But that's just, it's very tiring for us to do that, you know. And so what we tried to do this year was really balance between that, you know, the focus on our shows and focus on on the revenue streams, you know. Naturally, I started gravitating towards partnerships and revenue, whereas now the team I trust way more to handle the shows. So we became, I mean, I still have to read scripts and stuff like that when we do have to do like a big show. But in general, we have great producers. We have, you know, Bashar, who's handling that pipeline of content that we're pushing out. And month on month, it's been great. I mean, we're growing every month since January.
January 2021.
2020, I mean, the learnings of 2020. I mean, yes, 2021 we were growing, but we suffered. I'm not going to say every month was a growth. No, absolutely not. Some months, like, I would be depressed. I was like, what is going on? Like, we were doing so well the past 2 months. Why is it not good? You know, like tears and, you know, all of us crying. And but then what are you going to do? You got to get up, shake it off, and continue and see where your mistakes were. And we did a huge, like, data dump. Like, we just went in and we started seeing where we were doing well, where we weren't doing well, where were people dropping off, why were people dropping off, you know? And we tried to start fixing show by show, you know, and creating stuff like that.
So what works? Like, what are the shows? I mean,
there's
you have some hit shows.
No, we have a few shows that are you do, like, okay, we learned a lot, right? So, and everything you do right now is kind of everything in content, I think, it comes from data, but there's a part here after you go with your gut feel and your data and stuff like that, and you just have to test it with the people. So we started doing piloting phases, you know, where when we do a show, we don't commit to like 20 episodes or no, we just say, like, we're gonna do one pilot episode plus 4 other episodes. So a pilot, like, mini season. Why 5 episodes? Because we wanted to understand, because you can't really learn much from one episode, right? You have to have 5 at least to see if there's a pattern across 5 episodes. Like Basil today, who's telling you this, could not know any of this back in Jan 2021. I didn't even know what an IP was. I didn't even know I didn't know anything. This is all with experience. We had to teach ourselves to think this way. How to work with creators. What's IP? How much can we own from the IP? How much can they own? Who should we give IP out from? Who do we license to? Who do we not license to? You know, all this stuff we learned on the job over the past year. You know, like, there's no rule book or playbook for podcasts. So we had to learn from video. We had to learn from Kaza. Like, what do they do? How do we apply that to podcasts? You know, piloting phase really worked out for us. Like for قرارات غيرت التاريخ, one of our shows, decisions that changed history, we put out 5, and we saw, like, we worked really hard on the 5, but then we saw completion rate amazing, and then that actually went behind Apple subs, which is the paid proposition of Apple Podcasts, and we started seeing some people actually paid for this. You know, let's do more of this type of content, because the more we get subscribers, the better it is. Like, let's scale through, but that's another, obviously, thing that it's another science that we need to get into. But so we did Al-Rasul, and we did based on that data, that's that understanding of that people liked that type of content,
which is like historical,
like narrative, factual. But we did it in a very not a conversation, but. And that's just one of our verticals, right? There's other verticals that we work on. But this one was interesting because people paid for it. There was tweets about it from people that we don't know. You know, like in Saudi, people saying, recommend me some podcasts. And قرارات غيرت التاريخ, التكريتي, الرسول, like, it kept coming up in recommendations from people in Saudi that we didn't know. It's like, okay, we're onto something here. This is good. You know, there's a small sample size that's reacting with this podcast, and let's do more of this, you know? So that's on the asli proposition, what we call asli, which is our narrative, voice acted, scripted. We never do something that's like, 1995 TV. وفي مثل هذا اليوم كان, like, we don't do that, It has to be like a very, like a relatable host that you can, like, kind of like Business Wars. Business Wars, like at face value, sounds boring, but when you get into it, it's one of the best podcasts in the world. The narration is amazing, the voice acting is awesome, the research is great. It's just like concise, like exactly what you want out of a podcast. It's amazing. Wondery, my favorite podcast company. Please buy us. I don't know. Anyway, Wondery's been bought by Amazon. So
by
Amazon.
By Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only for $300 million. Not much. But yes, you're right. It is a very difficult industry. Very difficult because it's so new. It's like, think about YouTube in 2009 or 2008. I think that's where podcast is today. It will blow up, but it needs a couple of more years before it gets.
A couple of years or more, or
I think a couple of years, because right now, like, you go to Step Conference and whatever. There's podcasts, panels and stuff like that. So people are talking about it. Yes. We have brands who ask us about podcasts. We're doing
white. Let's talk about brands a little bit, by the way. I'm curious about that. I mean, are brands working with you, approaching you? Do they know how to work with you?
Yeah.
And kind of like, do you help them build community? Like, what's the end goal? Is it for them to drive a certain message, or?
Look, I think it's two things. I think that they come to us for two things. One is producing a new show. And two is, accessing an audience, So obviously with our asli proposition, you can't really advertise on that because
you mean this is original content that
original
you
scripted,
produce.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, we produce everything we do, but asli is just the narrative, scripted IP that we come up with, like الرسول, like قرارات غاية التاريخ, التكريتي, انفجار بيروت. These are all things that we did. And then you have our creators that we work with, like Maya Hajej, Mason Muhammad, Abdullah Naimi. All these guys are people who are passionate about starting a podcast, so they come to us and we talk about starting a show together, and we started that show. So we work on revenue share basis, but we create the show for them that suits them, and we build their personality, we build them on the podcast and that kind of thing. So that's the creator element. And under the creators, there's different verticals that we look at. So we look at gaming, we look at women. So Hala, for example, a big partnership that we're doing, inshallah, that we will launch next month is with the Saudi Esports Federation. And we're launching an esports podcast called Al-Marhala. And that's going to be amazing because it's got Saudi host who's like very credible in the space. We have amazing guests from the Saudi esports leagues and stuff like that. But that's an example of a partnership that we are doing with an authority in Saudi Arabia that is going to have a lot of impact, I think. In terms of brands, I think brands fall within these two things.
No?
Some yes, some no. I think some of the brands that advertise with us, of course they do. Like Nivea and Infinity, to name a couple, like Formula One in Saudi Arabia. We've worked with a lot of these type of brands.
They come to you directly or through an intermediate?
With Infinity, well, most of the time, yes, it is direct. Yeah. But we're hoping to change that it becomes a natural thing through media agencies. Okay. That's what our goal is, because obviously if you become part and parcel with a media agency, then you don't have
part of the media plan.
Yeah, exactly. Become part of the media plan.
Or if you're listening to us, media agency,
who
media buyers.
Samara, I think, was on the.
Samara, yeah.
Please send that to him. I don't know if he's in an agency or not, but
he's no longer with OMD. But yeah,
if he knows someone at OMD. But yeah, so it is. I mean, that's where we need to get to.
So it's because it's a lot of effort for you as well.
It is a lot of effort. It's so much effort.
It's to go and pitch it, and
every pitch to a client is a major pitch. Yeah. You put the deck together and you have to go to the client and you have to show the client the KPIs and then you have to make sure that you don't price it at a point where they're like, "Oh, buddy, you're just a podcast, all right? You need to calm down," But I have
But you were saying, so some get it and some, but like when they get it, is it mostly on the sponsorship side or they want to co-create with you?
Some come to us to co-create, and then we tell them it's better. This proposition that you want, we have already with existing podcasts, so it's better for you to jump on that. Okay. Look, at the end of the day, it's very similar to what any content creator is. All we're doing is it's content creation. It's the same thing, except it's predominantly audio. That's it. But I can get you the same engagement you're getting off this Instagram influencer. With Mace, for example, who has Lahza Ma Mace, and it's a great show, and it gets very high engagement and very high completion rate. And so we can do that. It's an educational process with a lot of people that we can potentially do that with. So yeah.
How do you build a community? So it's because obviously distribution is a big part of it. I mean, there's the whole obviously content piece, right, and the production piece, but there's also the distribution piece.
Yeah.
And I think like because we spoke about Joe Rogan, and I think what is interesting about Joe Rogan is you have a lot of engagement, at least before he moved to Spotify, right? I think one of the reasons why people were upset because he moved to Spotify is because there was a lot of engagement on YouTube,
yeah,
right?
True. Yeah, he had a lot of...
How do you build this here? I mean, do you actively build this? Do you want to build this as a network, or is it...
Do you mean as videos or just generally?
As a community, like,
Yeah, I think we take... Again, this is a learning over the past year, is that we started grouping shows that look alike closer with each other. So if we know, for example, people are seeking value out of a podcast, what kind of value are they seeking? Is it a mental health value? Is it a fitness value? So we understood that, if you look alike, then maybe we can advertise shows across each other, for example, to grow audiences. Also, we work a lot in partnership with the platforms to understand what the platforms want, and what kind of programming are they looking for? And so how can we help them create those shows that can naturally fit within what their agenda is, and
platforms being like Apple Podcasts,
like Apple, Spotify, Deezer, Anghami, all of these guys, And it's very important to maintain that relationship with them. And then also making sure that we have the right creator to be a host for the podcast, because that creator comes with credibility, and you don't want a creator that doesn't know what they're talking about to talk about mental health. Like, who are you to talk about mental health, Yeah. So good credibility, good sizable audience is preferable if you come with a sizable audience, because we can use your platform to also seed that content as well. And then PR, I think, is important. So like we work with a PR agency to help us put the word out there. So, we got Maya on a couple of publications, for example, to talk about what it means for her to do, to cover the topics that she covers on her podcast, not necessarily the podcast itself. So all these things help us build these audiences. At the end of the day, yes, we're a podcast company, but in reality, we're an audience business.
It's a media business.
Yeah, it's a media. We sell audiences. Like I don't want to say that, obviously that sounds wrong, but we sell, like, why brands come to us is they don't come because they like, Basil as a person, great, we're good, but you want access to the audience groups that we are developing and nurturing and developing these communities and that kind of thing, and that's the type of business that it is in reality, Now, for us, there is obviously a bigger goal, For us, it's, we always say like the mission is to move podcasting forward. And what that means is, having more voices from the region talk and tell their stories. And I really like that there is that element with podcasts. It's a very authentic type of content. It's empowering credible people. It's long form. So like, it's not like a scrolling thing where you see 3 seconds and that's that. No, it's long form. It requires your attention. It fills a gap in your day, where a dead gap in your day when you're driving or when you're running or whatever. It fills that gap and it gives you value, and that's so important, I think, for us. And we want to do way more of this, and that's the mission, so move podcasts forward by having so many of these voices join us. And, we're on that path, like you said, like 30 shows. and hopefully to reach to 100 and 200 and, you know, yeah.
And get Amazon to acquire you.
Yeah, I will not say no.
You would not say no.
Please, if you're...
And so just to wrap up, I guess, just on the financials, because I think, again, podcasting is, I think it's definitely gotten bigger than I think when I met you a few years back.
Definitely, yeah.
But like, how are you finding, you know, fundraising? If like these, do you have these conversations? I'm sure you're.
Yeah.
I mean, as a founder
Sure.
or co-founder of a business, right? You're probably always thinking about the money. Where's it gonna come from?
I don't sleep at night.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't even think this was possible for you to think about this all the time, but you have to. Like, you have to, because when you love something so much, you want it to survive. Yes. You know, like, and I do. I love Rising Giants. I love what we're doing. I love our podcasters. I love the people that we work with.
It must be challenging because I feel like a lot. I mean, at least like now that I do angel investing, and I've met a lot more angel investors, and obviously the VCs, etc. Everyone's interested in the tech kind of business, right?
Yeah.
So I think companies that aren't necessarily tech find it really difficult. I had Sarah Shama on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she has a business where she manufactures like mealtime products for kids, and it's a non-tech business, and it was a real challenge like for her to raise funds. So
yeah.
I can imagine,
it's tough.
What you need to go through.
Yeah. Look, I mean, at this stage, we're focused so much on revenue generation. Because if revenue comes in, it keeps us alive. That funds us, like we don't need to raise, we don't need to, so that's what we're laser focused on. And to sign deals that make sense for the business, but also funds us enough that can keep us going to pay our salaries and to do what we need to do, So today, this is what we're focused on. And we've been successful in many instances in getting these type of deals and that kind of thing that come in and put some kind of cash injection into the company, keeps us going and going and going. Now, where are we going to be next year? And will we see the need to raise again? I don't know, maybe. If so, then if that's what's going to keep us going and gets us to grow, then great, let's do that. I don't mind that at all. But also, when you want to go raise, you have to show a case study, right? Like, you have to show that, okay, I've grown this much, and this is the amount of downloads that I got, and this is the amount of revenue that I've generated. So this is worth it for you to invest in, Yeah. Or if I don't show revenue and I don't, like, it's all like cyclical. Like, you have to, like, it's no getting away from it. You have to do it, And it gets you to become more aggressive as a person, I think. And I've never sold a thing in my life before Rising Giants, like never. Honestly, like I was always in content. I promise. The only thing I sold was when I was a kid. I had trading cards, like NBA trading cards.
Okay.
And I knew Michael Jordan was very much like in demand. So I opened the case, I put Michael Jordan in the front, I wrapped it up again as if it was new, and I told kids, like, my dad got this from Dubai, because I was in Amman back then, and sold it for 2 JDs, and I made 2 JDs as a kid. It's good money for a 12-year-old, but since then I haven't sold anything, and so, but you have to like I was saying earlier, test your capacity as a person and what you can do, and you have to really push yourself. And you have to really drop your ego very quick at the beginning of your business, because that's not going to serve you at all. You know how many times I've been ghosted? Like, I go to a meeting, I sit in a meeting, and I sit there waiting for the person, and that person doesn't come and messages me and says, like, oh, was our meeting today? Oh. Yeah, our meeting was today. Oh, I forgot. Can we do it tomorrow? So your ego should say, no, that. Like, you should have come to my meeting today. Yeah. But you know what I said? Of course. Yeah. Of course we can do it tomorrow.
Of course.
And you go and you have to do what you got to do,
Of course. As an entrepreneur, you have to.
Yeah.
You really have to.
And that's where your capacity comes in, Like, you have to drop your ego. You have to test your capacity, how much you can be doing, and just keep knocking any door you think you need to be knocking. And one of them will be a winning door.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people say yes, and then they pull out, like just the eve of. They say like...
that happens a lot.
Yeah, and it kills me, like...
That happens happens a lot.
Yeah.
You know, a lot when I'm doing things, sometimes like my husband will ask me like, why aren't you excited about it? Like, it's in the bag. I said, no, it's not in the bag until it's signed. The money is in the bank, you know,
That's
and
true.
then it's in the bag. I've had people pull off as well.
Yeah. It's
Happens
so annoying.
all the time.
It's so
happens
annoying.
all the time.
I remember it happened to me recently, and I got the email in the car, and I put the phone down. It was good money, you know, and I was like,
Is this a sponsorship or an investment?
yeah, it's a sponsorship.
Okay.
And I was like, I just sat there in the car for 15 minutes. I
I scream? Do I cry?
I didn't know what to do. I was like, Bassett, allow yourself to be sad for 10 minutes. Just allow yourself to be sad. It's fine. Be sad, you know?
Yeah.
But then what do you gotta do? You get up, you dust it off, and you continue. Like, okay, fine, you lost it. Now what? Go find something else, you know? It's just the harsh realities that you don't really think about when you're excited about starting something, you know? But if you love something enough, I think you'll see it through. And look, maybe Rising Giants, you know, I don't know, maybe it will succeed, maybe it will fail. The possibility is still there, you know? But you have to keep at it. You can't give up. You know, you have, as cliche as that sounds, you know, and test your capacity. Just keep testing your capacity, you know? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bassett.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for the CMOs, marketing managers who
Please
are
reach
listening
out.
out there, you know,
Put it on LinkedIn. I will cry, and just so you can put it on LinkedIn on your page so people can reach out to me. But yeah, no, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you doing this. You know, the podcast space is tough, you know.
It's great to be talking to you.
No, thank you.
And thank you for hosting me on your podcast also a few years
I'll do
ago
it again.
and kind of talking me into starting my own. So thank you as well for
Cool,
that.
thanks.
And yeah, we'll meet again, I guess.
Hopefully when I sell Rising Giants.
Hopefully.
So we can talk about the success
exit.
story
Yes,
you know,
hopefully.
of RGN. Yeah, thank you so much, though. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Conversations with Loulou. If you want to know more about Rising Giants Network, you can visit risinggiantsnetwork.com. Don't forget to visit the show's website, conversationswithloulou.com. You can also follow me on social media at Loulou Khazen. If you're enjoying the show, please do leave us a review, and I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest episodes. It was great to be with you today. I wish you lots of love and light, and see you in a couple of weeks.